On November 13, 2003, the Alabama Court of the Judiciary ordered the removal of Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore from his post. The decision resulted from Moore's refusal to obey what he considered a tyrannical order from a federal judge, commanding him to remove a stone monument of the Ten Commandments from the rotunda of the Alabama Supreme Court building. The federal court, which was not overruled because the Supreme Court refused to consider Moore's appeal, insisted that the state of Alabama could not acknowledge God by displaying a religiously based representation, even though the Alabama Constitution says, "We, the people of the state of Alabama, in order to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, invoking the favor and guidance of Almighty God, do ordain and establish the following constitution and form of government for the state of Alabama." This is not at all what the Founding Fathers intended for the future of our country. I am getting very tired of people trying to tell me that the founders were not religious, and that this country was not founded on Christianity. They are 100% wrong. The founders also never intended to put a wall between God and the government, as the progressives have so easily gotten the nation to believe. This is all a twisted perversion of the Constitution and needs to end. Aren't the following photos proof that our founders' intention was not for a separation of church and state?
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Are they now going to shave down all these carvings and remove everything else about God on our government buildings? What you America/God haters need to do is pick up a book once in a while and educate yourself. That way, When you come out and try to talk about the history of this country, you won't look like such a fool. There are dozens and dozens of books out there containing rich history on how our country was started. Many of these books are filled with quotes coming straight from the founders' mouths, their diaries, and many other historical writings. And you can't argue with facts. Let me throw out a few titles on where you can get started and perhaps learn something. Then maybe you could help us put our country back to the way that our founders had intended, with God being our leader. Try starting with George Washington's Sacred Fire. What sets George Washington's Sacred Fire apart from all previous works on this man for the ages is the exhaustive 15 years of Dr. Peter Lilbach's research revealing a unique icon driven by the highest of ideals. Only do George Washington's own writings, journals, letters, manuscripts, and those of his closest family and confidants reveal the truth of this awe-inspiring role model for all generations. George Washington set the cornerstone for what would become one of the most prosperous, free nations in the history of civilization. Then, move on to Wall of Misconception. How often have you heard it stated on TV, in the press, or by an acquaintance that the wall of separation between church and state are words taken right out of the U.S. Constitution? In fact, the First Amendment to the Constitution, what is popularly referred to as the Establishment Clause, the only part of the U.S. Constitution that even deals with religion and faith, contains no reference whatsoever to a wall of separation, or, for that matter, any sort of wording including the phrase separation of church and state. Yet, these 16 words have been elaborately interpreted by some as having a meaning that has no basis in the founders' intentions or historic record. The phrase, wall of separation, was coined by Thomas Jefferson in his private 1802 letter of response to the Danbury Baptist Association, wherein he reaffirmed the federal government's intention to protect the public's rights of conscience, to believe and practice their faith without fear of interference from government. Lastly, my favorite book of all time, The 5,000-Year Leap. The nation the founders built is now in the throes of a political, economic, social, and spiritual crisis that has driven many to an almost frantic search for modern solutions. The truth is that the solutions have been available for a long time in the writings of our founding fathers, carefully set forth in this timely book. In The 5,000-Year Leap, a miracle that changed the world, discover the 28 principles of freedom our founding fathers said must be understood and perpetuated by every people who desire peace, prosperity, and freedom. Learn how adherence to these beliefs during the past 200 years has brought about more progress than was made in the previous 5,000 years. And finally, a few more writings from the founders themselves.
It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and favor. God governs in the affairs of man, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without His notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without His aid? Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and preserving grace, too proud to pray to the God that made us. Can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are the gift of God, that they are not to be violated but with His wrath? There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations. The belief in a God, all-powerful, wise, and good, is so essential to the moral order of the world and to the happiness of man, that arguments which enforce it cannot be drawn from too many sources. Except the Bible, there is not a true history in the world. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
House will be in order. The prayer today will be offered by our guest chaplain, the Father Luke Columbus, from St. Basil's Greek Orthodox Church in Stockton, California. Chaplain?
I guess there's not much the ACLU can do with this, because it is requested that it be done by Benjamin Franklin himself. Listen closely. Benjamin Franklin, at the Constitutional Convention on June 28, 1787.
In this situation of this assembly, groping as it were in the dark, to find political truth, and scarce able to distinguish it, when presented to us, how has it happened, sir, that we have not, hitherto once thought, of humbly applying to the Father of lights, to illuminate our understandings? In the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer, in this room, for the divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle, must have observed frequent instances, of a superintending providence in our favor. To that kind providence, we owe this happy opportunity, of consulting in peace, on the means of establishing our future national felicity. And have we now forgotten that powerful friend? Or do we imagine that we no longer need his assistance? I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proof I see, of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of man. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings, that except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. We shall be divided by our little partial local interests. Our projects will be confounded, and we ourselves shall become a reproach, and byword, down to future ages. And what is worse, mankind may, hereafter, from this unfortunate instance, despair of establishing governments, by human wisdom, and leave it to chance, war, and conquest. I therefore beg leave to move, that henceforth prayers, imploring the assistance of heaven, and its blessings, on our deliberations, be held in this assembly every morning, before we proceed to business, and that one, or more of the clergy of this city, be requested, to officiate, in that service.
After the Constitutional Convention had finished its work, in 1787, a woman asked Ben Franklin what kind of government had been decided upon. He replied, "A republic. If you can keep it. It doesn't look like we're doing too good a job at keeping it. How did we get so far off track? It is time to reform America back to the way that the Founding Fathers intended."
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.